Now, just blink for yes or die for no. Hello, my name is Will, and this is Exploding Helicopter, the podcast that likes to yell, get to the blimp. Now, over the course of his 40-year Hollywood career, John Frankenheimer carved out a reputation as a consummate director of action and suspense films. In titles such as The Manchurian Candidate, 7 Days in May, and Ronin, he deftly combined hot-button topics with the psychological dilemmas of his protagonists to create compelling, adult-orientated thrillers. Now, on this show, we are looking at one of his less heralded films, 1977's Black Sunday. To help me review the film, I'm joined by a man who's come to see both sides of the question. It's my regular comrade in arms, Nick Rehak. Welcome back to the show, buddy.
Thank you again for having me, Will. I appreciate it.
Well, you know I'm always pleased to have you on the show, mostly because of your enthusiasm for exploding helicopters, but I'm especially pleased you're able to review this film with me because you're going to be able to bring your expertise as an aficionado of films where airships explode, because I know that in the past you have been a guest on the Exploding Airship podcast.
I was, and it was a lot of fun, and I was very excited to see this and bring that experience with me to this program.
Well, I mean, I know the Exploding Airship podcast is a very highly regarded, much superior podcast to my own humble effort. So I appreciate you slumming it here on Exploding Helicopter. But happy to tap into your expertise talking about airship films where airships blow up. But when I pitched doing this film to you, you were quite excited because you said that you were looking forward to the opportunity to exploring a bit more of the work of Robert Shaw. So I was interested in what you've seen of his and why you were interested in checking out some more of his films.
So I had only ever seen him in Jaws. Like, that is it for my relationship with Robert Shaw. I've never seen him in anything else, but, reading trivia and behind the scenes stuff, you hear about, like, he came in as this phenomenal actor, and you see the speech about the Indianapolis, and such an incredible speech. I'm like, this guy's got to be a phenomenal actor. Like, there's no way he's not, but I've never really explored it. And so I'm watching Jaws for I don't know how many of the time, and one day I decided, like, you know what, I'm gonna watch more of his stuff, or at least more films where he is in them, and just kind of grow from there. The only other film I've seen with him up until this point, this now makes number 3, was The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Obviously, the 1974 version. It's a really, really good film, and he plays it just really calm, really cool, collected. But he almost came off as more of, I don't know, I felt like in each film, he's felt like a different actor. Like, I've yet to see a performance where I'm like, that's Robert Shaw, like, outside of Jaws. Like, when I saw him in Pelham 1, 2, 3, I'm like, I'm getting more of like an Alec Guinness kind of feel with this performance. And then with this one, I felt like he was completely different again. Like, if you asked me for like the through line between these three, I don't think I'd be able to find it, because nothing sticks out as like, that's Robert Shaw. You know what I mean? Like, you can look in film and go like, that's Tom Cruise, or oh, that's Brad Pitt, or oh, that's, whomever. But I don't really get that with Shaw, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's part of his kind of vibe, where he's like kind of bringing something a little bit different to each film and kind of mixing it up, and so you don't expect the same type of, I wouldn't necessarily say mannerisms, but you just get a little something different from him each time.
Okay, well, I am intrigued that you have seen so little of Robert Shaw's work. I mean, have you never watched From Russia with Love, the James Bond film?
That's one of the few I didn't see. My grandmother had mixed DVD box sets, which I didn't like growing up as a kid, because some of it was like, oh, this one's Sean Connery, these two are Roger Moore, this one's Pierce Brosnan. It really bummed me out, because I'm like, well, why not just have, hey, here's all the Sean Connerys, here's all the Roger Moores, here's all the Pierces. Like, why would you mix them up like this? So that one has always been a blind spot for me, which was really disappointing. I have the box set. I have the James Bond box set. It's all the films up until the most recent one, Don't Die Today, or Bad Day to Die, whatever the most recent one is. That one is not in the set, but all of them are there. I just haven't sat down and watched it yet.
A Bad Day to Die. That's a
Yeah.
great. That's a great name for a James Bond film or a Steven Seagal film. I think.
Ooh, that's even better.
But you've never seen The Sting either?
No, and if I have zero memory of it,
Wow.
like at all. I know. And some of it is like a little embarrassing. Like The Sting, obviously, that's something I should have. Okay, so I didn't see The Sting. What's the one, Popeye Doyle? Is that the conversation?
Popeye Doyle is the French Connection.
The French Connection. So that I've seen. How I'm mixing those up, I have no idea. So I clearly
Very
have
different
never
films,
seen The
Nick.
Sting. Well, they all got like hats and ties on. So I mean, after a while,
Well, one's set in the 1920s, and one's set in very clearly 1970s gritty contemporary New York. So,
all right, you got me there. But for the most part, no, I haven't. I have not seen The Sting.
okay, well. Look, I'm going to stop busting your balls now. I'm happy that we're talking about this film. We're helping you with your Robert Shaw education. And I guess we'll be talking very shortly about what you made of him in this particular film. So with no further ado, I think it's time we got stuck into Black Sunday. So let's find out exactly who the terrorists want to target.
People of America, this situation is unbearable for us. Until you understand that and stop helping the Israelis with arms and money, we of the Black September movement will make it unbearable for you. Today's horror is nothing to what will happen unless your government acts now. We have begun the year for you with bloodshed.
If you do not help me, you may have on your hands the blood of a great many innocent Americans.
Just a minute, sweetie. I'm getting something for you.
Her name is Dahlia Iyad, of Arab-German extraction. Black September joined in 1973. Here is her face. Look at it.
You know, for 30 years I have been killing and murdering. What have I achieved? Same world, same wars, same enemies, same friends, and same victims.
Black Sunday came out in 1977. It was based on a novel by Thomas Harris, who also wrote Silence of the Lambs. The film is set in the tense political climate of the Cold War era. The story revolves around a terrorist plot to carry out a devastating attack during the Super Bowl in Miami. A disillusioned former Vietnam prisoner of war, played by Bruce Dern, and a Palestinian terrorist group led by Marthe Keller plan to use an airship filled with explosives to unleash chaos and destruction on the unsuspecting crowd. As the plot unfolds, Robert Shaw's Israeli intelligence officer teams up with an American FBI agent to prevent the catastrophic attack. With time running out, the duo races against the clock to locate the blimp and defuse the explosive threat. In the cast, we have the aforementioned Robert Shaw, Bruce Dern, Marthe Keller, and the chameleon-like Stephen Keats. Black Sunday was a relative financial success when it was released, grossing $15 million against its $8 million budget. It received largely positive reviews or mixed praise from critics, with plaudits for the craft and technical accomplishments of the direction, but some criticism for the characterization. As for Joe Public, the film has a 6.8 user rating on IMDb and a 3.4 out of 5 user rating on Letterboxd. So with all of that out of the way, Nick, what did you make of Black Sunday?
I don't know. This is one of the few films that I've watched that I don't know how I feel about it, and I think I genuinely have to watch it again. Initially, I don't like it.
Ooh.
But I love the performances. I like a lot of the camera work, and I really dig the score. But story-wise, I want more but less at the same time, if that at all makes sense. There's a lot of really cool things that they introduce and some ideas that I don't think necessarily land the way they want them to, or it just lands and it's landed, and we're with the idea, but we sit on it for so long, or we kind of keep repeating the same thing over and over, or kind of beating that dead horse. And I'm like, yeah, we get it. We get that that's who you are, or we get that that's what this is. Can we move on to something else? Can we tighten it up, or take out some of that excess and put something newer in there to pull me in? Because I'm pulled in very early on to the film, but then as it kind of goes and goes and goes, I'm like, okay, so when are we going to get to, I don't want to say the good part, but when are we going to get to, like, when are we going to get there? Let's keep going. Because there was a time where I paused this and I'm like, I have an hour and a half more to go. Like, it really caught me off guard. Yeah. And some films, I'm okay with that. If the story is there, if the performances and content is there, that's fine. But with this one, pacing becomes an issue for me. And the story, it just, towards the end, it started losing me, and I wanted to be more excited and dialed into certain scenes that were happening. And in my mind, I'm watching this, I'm like, oh man, I can imagine this being so tense, but I wasn't feeling it. Like, I could recognize how I should have been in that moment, but I wasn't that in that moment, you know?
Well, let's unpack that a little bit. So can you give me an example of something that you wanted more of and something you wanted less of?
I wanted more Bruce Dern, but I wanted more Bruce Dern in the world with other people. And I wanted more Bruce Dern in the world, like, himself, and seeing, like, how he is. I kind of got over the Marthe Keller role pretty quickly. After a while, I'm just like, yeah, we get it. Let's go do something else. Like, let's really, and Bruce Dern, I was just so mesmerized by him every time he was on the screen, just for him to be like this very soft, I don't want to say broken man, but essentially like a borderline, like, kind of broken guy, just kind of, he had his time over in Vietnam and was kind of just left by the system, and he's slowly putting his life back together. They kind of just, like, left him there, but I want to explore, like, more of that psyche. I want to meet more of this character, because when he goes from those soft moments to all of a sudden something clicks, and he went from 0 to 100, 120, 130. Very quickly, we start to see a little more of that wilder side, and that's when I'm clicking. I'm like, that's where Laura Dern gets it. Like, that's where she can become a Looney Tune and really unhinged, because her father's really good at this. And I wanted to see more of that, but then it just kind of gets muddled and tucked away. Now, maybe that's the sign of a good performance, and it's one of those, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, or had it been too much on him, it would have been kind of hammy, and it wouldn't have the effect on me that it did. Maybe that's the case. But as it stands, like, after this first watching, I want more of him, but doing other things with other people.
So, I do think we get quite a lot of Bruce Dern. So we get to see him with Marthe Keller on multiple occasions when they're having some sort of emotional, sort of heart-to-heart type scenes, when they're together, like doing things, committing, like carrying out work that they need to do in order to kind of execute their terrorist plot. We also get to see Bruce Dern with his psychiatrist. We also get to see Bruce Dern at work. So, I kind of felt like we did see quite a lot of Bruce Dern in quite a lot of different scenarios, but you still wanted more. You still wanted something else. So, can you put your finger on what it was? Is it just as simple as I just want more?
I think it's a combination. I just want more, and it's also seeing what Robert Shaw gets to do versus what Bruce Dern gets to do. And I understand why their characters do what they do, because it's part of kind of the plans that he has lined up in place in order to be able to pilot the blimp later on. So I get why he kind of has to lay low a little bit and has to do certain things. But, running through the streets and having a crazy gunfight, like, I want more of that. Like, I want to see Bruce Dern doing something like that. Like, yeah, we got a really cool boat chase. We get a lot of fun on the helicopter, but I just wanted to see more of him. Like, I guess monologue and moment when it's he's like, yeah, they didn't choose me to be the pilot, and he's talking about his, wife and who he is as a person, and he's kind of having that breakdown. Like, I'm like, this is phenomenal. I'm like, give me more of this, and then we just kind of get away from it, and I just want more. I just want more of it.
Greedy for the Dern. That's
yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about his character, Bruce Dern's character in this film, because I thought that was an element of the story that I thought was particularly intriguing, and because Bruce Dern is the perpetrator of this terrorist atrocity. He's also portrayed as a victim, somebody who has suffered as a prisoner of war during the Vietnam conflict, someone who has returned to the States to find that his wife has just up and left him whilst he was away, but also somebody who is now a victim again, in the sense that he is being manipulated by Marthe Keller's character. Yet at the same time, there are scenes here in this film which indicate that Bruce Dern is a bit of a psychopath, really. I mean, there's that scene where he's carrying out the test for his bomb, and he ends up killing this poor janitor guy, and his only interest is in the kind of the spread of the nails. He's not interested in the bloodied corpse that is the symmetry of these holes in the side of this warehouse. He's not interested in the corpse that's lying in front of him. So there's sort of signs that he is there's evidence that he's a bit of a psychopath, but we are yet, despite all that, invited to have sympathy for him. So, I wondered, were you moved by his character? Did those elements add anything to the film for you?
I think it's a combination of moved by the character and just not expecting that from him whatsoever. Just not expecting to have so much depth from a character like that. In most films, we see it as like kind of one note, right? We just see this guy. It's like, I've been abandoned. They turned me down. They did this, and this is what I'm going to do to get them back. And this could very easily play like that, but he gives this extra just emotion and depth, and I don't want to say realism to it, but it seems like a guy that you could like pluck him out of this movie and put him onto the streets, and it would just be like not a normal guy, but there's just something about it that just seems so real and so genuine, as if he had really had those experiences, if he was really just like kind of basing it off of all these like true life experiences and emotions and all this other stuff. Like, it just felt so real to me that at times I was like, oh, that's right. Like, it's Bruce Dern, the actor kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that scene, I don't know how you felt about it, but that scene where he is with his psychiatrist, I mean, Bruce Dern in that particular scene is just, I thought he was just phenomenal. Like, he goes from being sort of humiliated to bravado to being sort of, really sort of arrogant to being really vulnerable. And he's switching between these things like on an absolute sixpence, yet those switches feel really believable, and he just goes through so many emotions, and he's kind of careering, pinballing around from different thoughts and feelings. Yet, you just think, if you sort of sounded that out on paper, you think, oh my goodness, that would never work on the screen. No one would be able to kind of pull that off believably. But yeah, that's what Dern does in this scene. And yeah, I just thought it was an amazing piece of acting in that particular sequence.
Yeah, and then you double down on that a little bit more with the testing scene. You know what I mean? He's talking to this guy, he's charming, and this whole time, he's testing a bomb, but it never feels like he's testing a bomb, right? I'm sold on this guy. Like, I'm sold on him just coming in. He's got all this equipment set up, and it's devious, right? You start to see the bomb equipment come out, and you're like, ooh, like, yikes, this isn't good. But like you said, the true psychopath and insanity really shines when he's talking about the spread and how he's looking at it as, art and this beauty, and he's like really getting her to look at it, like he really wants her to be into it. And that's in the film, most films, and especially this one, where I'm like, oh no, like this isn't good, like at all, because it gives you a feeling that he's gonna succeed. And in most films, like, yeah, they're not gonna succeed. It's the good guy's gonna stop them. But in this one, it really feels like, oh, he's gonna get away with it. Like in a big bad way, he's going to succeed. Like nothing is going to stop him. And it's not one of those like at points you're rooting for the guy because you feel sad. No, it's not one of those, but it's just one of those like he's going to succeed. And I don't think a lot of actors could turn this role into what it was by him. Like this is truly his role. Like there's no other way you could. I mean, the only thing I can think of is like maybe, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but like maybe Jim Carrey in a sense of that like screen presence and being able to like turn and have that command, that type of thing. That from that perspective, I think.
That is such a random. I never thought you were going to go for Jim Carrey. I mean, I was thinking maybe sort of younger Gary Oldman, or maybe somebody like James Woods, who sort of younger James Woods, who could really sort of tap into their inner crazy in dynamic ways. I didn't think Jim Carrey for sure, but I get it. I follow it.
Yeah, they can tap into that inner crazy, but there's always an underlying malice there. Bruce Dern does not pull out the malice until it needs to be malicious. And then that's when it like adds that extra heft of like, oh no, like this ain't good. Like, yikes.
Well, one aspect of this film that I really appreciated was the craftsmanship of John Frankenheimer. I mean, so and throughout the film, there's actually quite a lot of use of verite sort of filmmaking techniques here. So there's some scenes early in the film which take place in a market in the Lebanon, where there's a lot of handheld camera, and you feel like these are scenes that are taking place in a live environment. There's a shootout sequence that takes place in Miami, and again that feels like something that is well, I guess. Well, I mean, clearly people in that sequence knew they were in a film and filming was taking place, but it did have a slightly improvised is the wrong word, but something that was happening in real time and not necessarily, barring the director and the actors, not necessarily everyone knew exactly what was going on. And obviously the denouement of this film, where they shot footage, including the principal actors, during the actual 1976 Super Bowl. So, yeah, I found that quality really, particularly in those sequences, I found that quality really added to the film. And yeah, I wondered, if you were as impressed by those elements as I was.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were moments where, and I haven't done this in a long time, where on first watch of the film, I like to just go right through and then afterward maybe revisit a moment or two. But there were some moments where I'm like, I got to see this again, and just immediately rewind and relive that moment. About halfway-ish through the film, but kind of towards the beginning of the shootout in Miami. And it's a very subtle moment. But there's a scene where guy's coming around with a girl in front of him. He gets in front of the hood of a car, and the camera kind of stops and then zooms in just a little bit into him. And that's when the intensity picks up, and they're starting to shoot across the street, and elderly people. Okay, let's try that again. Elderly people, they're ducking, and all of a sudden the camera work starts getting crazy, like it's a Bourne film or something. Like it kind of becomes this whole new energy, and moments you can tell, like, okay, the camera's on a stand and it's just whipping around, or it's on a crane or what have you. But when Robert Shaw is like running in between chairs and the camera's right alongside with him, you'd see that in a Mission Impossible movie. You would see that literally in any type of action film. But to see it in this, which I think is more of like a thriller than it is an actual like action film, although there are a lot of action pieces, there's so much happening, but it doesn't make you feel sick at the same time, right? It's not like a lot of today's where they're just shaking the camera around to shake it around. It all feels like natural, like you're there, like you're running with them. It just all has this real feeling. And it impressed me so much at times. I'm like, why is this so impressive to me? Because we've seen it done time and time and time and time and time again. But there's still some moments where I'm like, I got to see this again. That was great.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you, and I think that naturalism is probably the best way of describing it. It is a little bit Bourne-esque, but it's not taken to the extreme of Bourne. So it does almost have that documentary news reportage feel to some of those scenes, which I think really heightens the action that is taking place in there. And as for myself, I mean, I think the footage that takes place in the last half hour of this film, where they are shooting, during the actual Super Bowl, is just phenomenal. Because they've got the match is taking place on the field behind them, and they've sort of set up. In the plot of the film, Robert Shaw is looking around the stadium trying to find the threat that is potentially out there, and just the way in which they have managed to. Well, I mean, it's almost as if they've choreographed the action that is taking place on the field of play to kind of fit in with the action of the film. But obviously that's just completely impossible because we're watching a live real game of football. So it's just phenomenal skill from John Frankenheimer and the camera crew to be able to just set up in a way and grab this footage on the fly and make it seem as if it's all a completely coordinated piece of cinema, when actually they're just shooting this stuff on the fly, yet somehow it feels completely scripted. It's just phenomenal.
It blows you away. It's as if they said, hey, is D.A. Pennebaker busy? Because we could really bring him in and let him run around the camera and just kind of have fun. And like you said, it just feels so choreographed. But it's just people literally hanging out watching a football game. And it goes to show, too, for us Americans that have constantly grown up with football in our faces, the game back then is very different than it was today. Today, security out the wazoo, like it would be completely absurd. They have their own little entrance where they walk in and everyone's got on just wild looking suits, and it shows you how the game has really grown into a spectacle instead of just a game in itself. It's almost as if the game is why you show up, but you're busy watching everything else. Whereas here, you're showing up for the game because you're going to watch the game as well. It carries this energy with you that it doesn't match like today's type of energy, like during football games, or it makes it almost feels too real. Like you said, to where it's choreographed. And now the ones where you see it in film, it's fake and they're passing it off as real. But it just blows me away, some of that camera work in there. Like you said, the verite, them just being right in there as if it was choreographed. But no, they're just walking around. And now I really, really, really want to find old footage of that Super Bowl and see if they talk about it at all, or if you can actually catch like parts of Robert Shaw like walking around, like how they pulled off what they pulled off. Like I would love to see it behind the scenes on how they made this work.
I find it incredible that they actually got the permission to do this, because they would have I know it was the producer of this film, the legendary Robert Evans, who negotiated the permissions to shoot during this particular Super Bowl. But I find it amazing because the conversation would have been, we're making this film called Black Sunday. It's about terrorists who try to blow up the Super Bowl. Do you mind if we shoot that film with that plot during your actual, Super Bowl? And I imagine that conversation today, there'd be no way. There'd be umpteen, brand and marketing people who'd go, we can't possibly endorse that as a film because it might, prevent people coming to the Super Bowl, in the future, and our sponsors would, our sponsors don't want to be, don't want their brand associated with, terrorism. There'd be umpteen reasons why people would be putting umpteen reasons forward why this couldn't possibly happen. And I also find that again marvel at the fact that Goodyear gave permission for their blimp, their airship, to be a part of this film and be the the vehicle through which the terrorists aim to kill 80,000 people. Again, my mind boggles at I just find it inconceivable that any company today would, we're happy for our name to be stuck on the side of a blimp that is going to be part of a huge terrorist atrocity, even if it's in a fictional film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and if correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain that was Super Bowl 10, right? So like the big 10th anniversary, that should be a huge pulling out all the stops. Why would you want to take away from the Super Bowl, right? It should be Super Bowl 10. That's the focus, not some random movie that's also going on. The president is in this movie. Like, there's so many people in this film. How today would be a logistical nightmare. You could never, ever have that happen. If anything, you would have scenes in the film of them walking through the arena or the stadium itself, like behind doors and catching the game on a monitor, right? Like if you're standing in line for a hot dog or something, and then occasionally they would cut to the game, and you would just assume that character is at the game when really they're on a soundstage in Whereverville, USA, and it's nuts to think about it. It's a weird time capsule almost of like, look what we used to be able to do, and look what will never ever happen again, ever.
So I have a quick trivia question for you. So the match. This film was made. Incorporates the 1976 Super Bowl. But do you know who actually won this particular Super Bowl?
I'm going to guess it was the Steelers because they have like 6 Super Bowl rings. Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm going to say the Steelers too because I'm in Baltimore. Baltimore Ravens, we hate the Steelers. So apropos, it's going to be the Steelers.
Well, let's talk about Robert Shaw in this film because he's the hero of this movie and someone you were keen to check out. So what did you make of him in this film?
I dug it because it was reserved. Yes, there's moments where he's shouting and swinging and running around with a gun. Those action scenes, they call for it. But he had this quiet intensity that was reserved. Unlike Jaws, where he's a bit of a character, and then taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3, he's just very cold and calculated, right? He's Mr. Blue. We're getting it done. Now go. And in this one, he's just quiet, and there's something behind his eyes. We know that he's an agent of sorts and he has seen some things and he has done some things, but we never really get to see that extent on what that's done to him psychologically as we have with Bruce Dern's character. But with this character that he's playing, he's there and he's calm and he's going to get it done by any means, but we never really know how far he's willing to go. He just does it. And it just kind of unquestionably does it, and just pushes it too. I mean, they're in a car chase, and all of a sudden the car just ends up on the beach, like full car on the beach, and he's running after him still. Like at any point he could have gotten a car. Like there's just so much about his character that is just reserved that I was kind of surprised about. I kind of expected him to be a little more. I don't want to say have a little more oomph to him, but just have a little more gravitas or a little more energy. And instead, it's just a very reserved kind of guy.
Well, I'd agree with you on that. I mean, I think he's fantastic in this film, but I think reserved is a great way of describing the performance that he gives in this film. I mean, I guess he just shows you what a great actor he is because he's very blank through a lot of this film, but he makes that blankness compelling and he is able to add levels of depth to it, which just draws you in. There's clearly a hardness to his character, but we also see some moments of vulnerability from him as well, because there's that whole sort of plot point where surrounding the fact that earlier in the film he could have killed Marthe Keller's character, but out of some idea of humanity he opts not to kill her. And there are some scenes in this film where he talks about the sort of the toll that being this, I guess, state-sanctioned killer has played on him through all of these years. So I think he's very, very good in this film. I mean, the one criticism I guess that I'd make, and it's not really of his performance, it's more of the film, would be that this idea that they create, that they add to this element that they add to his character of, he's somebody who's, spent 30 years defending his country by, hunting down people and murdering them, and he now feels the toll of that, the weight of that on him, and you expect that to play some role in the actual plot of the film later, presumably at the climax, but it doesn't actually play out that way. So whilst those elements add some extra layers of dimension to his character, which I appreciated, I think it would have strengthened the film if they'd actually played into the plot and the idea of, okay, is he going to be able to act in the critical moments and carry out what needs to be done in order to, stop this terrorist attack happening?
Yeah, and he just does. There's never a moment, like you said, where we have that doubt, right? There's not a moment where he drops the ball and somebody gets away because of something he did. He's got that classic scene or moment where a character's running down an alleyway, someone's got a gun pointing at him, and they just shoot in an opposite direction, or they drop the gun, or they just get mad and storm away because they let them get away. Something in their mind stopped them from doing their job and executing. But at no point in this film does he kind of have that. He's always looking for what's next. He's always looking out for something. I mean, when he's running around the streets with a gun, he's firing. He knows exactly when he needs to fire. When he bursts into the little mobile studio to ask about the blimp, he doesn't say like, "Hey, excuse me." He's just shouting. He's like, "Who's on the blimp? Who's on the blimp?" He's trying to figure something out, and he's not backing down. There's no wavering of his confidence. He's just there and locked in. Now, if we started to see that wavering confidence, sure, that's going to complicate things, and it's going to add even more to being like, oh, Bruce is it's going to happen. Whether they want it to or not, it's going to happen. It kind of takes away from that, and just, it would have, I agree with you, it would have added a little something extra.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at the exploding helicopter action.
It is the most dangerous secret weapon in the world. Cyclone, the ultimate weapon on two wheels. A genius created it.
Rick was involved in a very important military project.
Everyone's after it.
I'm told you have something I want.
Only one woman controls it. Cyclone. Starring Heather Thomas and Martin Landau. Cyclone. Prepare for the ride of your life. It'll blow you away. No! Cyclone. The ultimate team of woman and machine.
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action. Since the dramatic focus of Black Sunday is an exploding Zeppelin, the film may seem an unpromising prospect for chopper fireball fans. Fear not, for during the film's exciting denouement, there is also some exploding rotary action to enjoy. As the airship languidly floats towards the Super Bowl, a police helicopter, a Bell 212, is scrambled to stop it. Happily, one of the terrorists has brought along a machine gun and energetically opens fire on the copper's chopper. Trailing smoke and flames, the wounded whirlybird loses altitude before it suddenly explodes. It goes up, ironically enough, like the Hindenburg. So Nick, what did you make of the exploding helicopter action?
I was disappointed. I liked the idea, and I like what they were attempting to do, but the execution in the editing and effects work side of things did not land well. When it happened, I'm like, there's another one, right? Like, it's not just this one. It's not just this. There's another one happening for sure. No, it was just this.
I mean, it's awful, isn't it? It's awful.
It's not. It's not great. Like, it is some really bad cuts. Now, again, I get what they're trying to do because the helicopter is spinning, which I'm a fan of. We haven't had a really big spinning helicopter like that for a while. Typically, it's just an explosion. To see this one wind down and go, okay, when's it going to go? When's it going to go? And then it finally explodes. When it explodes, I feel like they did a very weird, like, kind of edit thing to where they just cut to an explosion that has nothing to do with the actual helicopter itself. and then they immediately like zoom out of the crowd to kind of match that energy or something, and which is also kind of interesting too, because that's, you would think, oh, I hear an exploding helicopter, I would know. Well, you wouldn't, because the game is so loud, right? Everyone's so focused on the game, no one's paying attention. So from that side of things, like, okay, you got me on that, sure, but it's got to look better than this. This is a rough draft. That's what this is. This is the rough draft. And then you put the actual effects and you tighten it up and make it look a lot better than what it was, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I am completely baffled as to the quality or the lack of the quality of the exploding helicopter we get in this film, because this is a film that is filled with so much craft, and yet this is the exploding helicopter that they put on the screen. I find it truly baffling that they didn't spend some time, thought, and energy on coming up with something that is better than this. And to be honest, even the exploding blimp is awful. It's the same sort of cheat they use for that, where they just cut hard into just an exploding blob, and that fills the screen. And then they wisely, because they realise this is just awful to look at, they wisely cut to something else, so they don't dwell on it, which is about the only positive thing that I can say about this, is that they know that this is poor, and they don't spend a second on it longer than they need to, other than, okay, we have communicated the fact that these aircraft have exploded and we're out of this scene. Like, we're not spending any more time on it. That's the best that can be said about it. But yeah, it's my mind is blown, given the quality of the camera work, some of the scenes that we were talking about earlier, that they went with this. Mind blowing.
Yeah, it's like, imagine a big, beautiful wedding cake. Traditional, and on top you have the bride and the groom. But instead of like having very nice hand-detailed, carved, or 3D printed, whatever, they were like, let's just get some Funko Pops that were melted in the sun and put them on top. Now you have this big, beautiful cake, but it's an eyesore at the top. So why? Why? People want to see the explosion. That's one of the big things they want to see. They want to know what's coming, and what's coming is this explosion, because we're counting it down, because here comes the spin, right? It's swirling and swirling, and wow, that was disappointing. Wow, was that disappointing. Or it's like, I don't know, finding out the cake, the icing is not buttercream, it's soy sauce. Something. You know what I mean? It's just a disappointment all around. Because you want it to be bigger and better, and it should be bigger and better. But.
Oh, it absolutely should. It absolutely should. But I do have, it's not the greatest exploding helicopter, but I do have an interesting bit of potential trivia to throw at you, because I think the last film that we reviewed together was Under Siege. And in that film, we were discussing the fact that George W. No, it's not W, is it? It's Bush 41. George Bush, the original.
HW.
George H. Bush. He turns up in that film, and we were talking about the fact that this might be the only film ever made that features an actual real life American president.
Yeah.
But in this film, we get to see a little brief glimpse of everybody's favorite American president, Jimmy Carter.
That's true. Granted, it is very, very brief. It is
very brief.
Truly a blink and you miss it type thing. But now it makes me wonder, do we got a trifecta going? Is there a third one where, even though they don't realize they're in the movie, that they're in the movie? We were talking about that too, man.
We need to,
like
we need to see if we can track one down with Ronald Reagan and continue the through line of American presidents that feature in films that have exploding helicopters in them. But very strange that we were talking about that, and we were thinking, oh yeah, this is completely unique, and then the very next film we review, oh no, it's not unique. It's happened before.
Yeah, but explosion-wise, Under Siege kind of has this beat by a mile, by like a lot, like a whole lot.
Well, the other bit of potentially interesting or maybe only semi-interesting trivia I have is that apparently a different helicopter, the helicopter that tows the blimp out to sea to prevent it exploding across the stadium and killing thousands of people, the helicopter that was originally conceived of to do that was actually a completely different helicopter. It was a Sikorsky Sky Crane helicopter, which is a very unusual looking cargo carrying helicopter. But don't know what led them to change to a Bell 212. Probably the fact that they are a much more common vehicle, so probably potentially very easier to hire. But very interesting to see the conceptual artwork for the film, which featured that much more unusual type of helicopter.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, didn't even notice that. And I think because I was so busy thinking, like, logistically, how is this helicopter pulling this blimp around? Because the wind resistance alone has to be really slowing it down. Like, there's no way it's as fast as it is, and it's not swinging around willy-nilly. Like, I just had so many physics questions, I guess. And now decided to choose to focus on the reality of things rather than go, well, there's been a couple other not so believable things in the film, but let's focus on this instead.
Okay, I think that just about wraps things up for this show. Nick, thank you for joining me once again. Would you like to take a moment to plug anything you've got going on at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Lyrical Innuendo, part of the Rabbit Hole Podcast Network. It's a podcast hosted by Bubba Wheat and myself. Each episode, we pick a song from the annals of music history and determine what the song is really about. Recently, we discussed Barbie Girl by Aqua, and Head Games by Foreigner. So find us over on Spotify, where we're able to embed the song into the episode so you can hear it fresh while we share our take on the song.
Well, there you go. You've got a podcast recommendation for you now. As always, don't forget to check out the Exploding Helicopter website at explodinghelicopter.com for more reviews and information about the ways helicopters explode in film. If you can spread the word about what we do any way you can, I'd be very grateful. We'll be back soon, but until then, what should people do, Nick?
Keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters. This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
We'll be back soon, but until then, what should people do, Nick?
Look out for those exploding whirlybirds.
Can you give me Keep Watching the Skies from those exploding helicopters, please?
I will. I thought maybe let's be funny and mix it up, but I'll do that. Sorry. Whirlybirds really caught me off guard. Okay.
You're a pro.
Keep your eyes on the skies for those exploding helicopters.
Keep watching the skies.
Keep watching the skies. I knew that's the word I was missing too. All right. Keep watching those skies for those exploding helicopters.
That's close enough.
What is it? I messed it up again?
Keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
Okay. Keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
Perfect.